The issue that we're dealing with immediately, the imminent issue that we're dealing with, the local issue we're dealing with, is this idea called Ganva Apum Machtarta Rachamon Akarya. Ganva Apum Machtarta Rachamon Akarya means that a Ganef breaks and enters, he breaks and enters to steal for sure, to kill possibly, and he davens to Hashem to help him. And by the way, I have a chavrusa with a guy who's a very down-to-earth man. He's not like me. He lives in the real world. And we learn Gemara together. So I pointed out to him that the difference between a Ganev and a Gazlan, if you think about it, it's not entirely true, but it's quite true. The difference between a Ganev and a Gazlan is Gazlan is a violent criminal. And the Ganev is a white-collar criminal. And that according to halacha, a white-collar criminal gets punished more severely than a violent offender, which is very interesting.
Actually affect them.
What do you mean?
Like the white-collar criminal, you punish him, you won't be like, oh, I'll do it again anyway.
Well, there's like more to the story. It's not just that he's a white-collar criminal. It's also the fact that
he's not afraid of God.
Yeah.
I understand, but it's still interesting because
it's not. You're pointing it wrong. Basically, the white-collar criminal gets punished less for the crime of stealing. The Goslin, for stealing, he's getting punished less. But for he has to still pay. That's like sorry, he has to still pay all those things. That a Goslin doesn't have to pay.
Yeah, but a Goslin, when you say a Goslin, what you see, you have to understand the psychology of it. And I don't want to spend the whole class on this. If you live in a civilization where there's violent crime, with muggings, people just grab each other's purses and nothing is done about it, you can't live.
100%.
Okay, if people have white-collar crime, it's a terrible thing. A violent criminal doesn't necessarily hurt you. He just intimidates you. He makes you feel afraid. And because he makes you feel afraid, you give him what he asks for. That's the point. And in a normal, the way I always understood it, common sense I think would say, I live in New York, okay, and I went through the different politics of Dinkins and Giuliani, and we saw clearly that you cannot live in a society with violent crime. If you take the violent crime off the street, the place becomes safer. People think differently. But halacha, Torah says differently. Torah says a Goslin, if he swears, pays 1 1/4. A Ganef, if he swears, pays twice. I'm really babbling. I'm really just trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. It just hit me that a Ganev is like a white-collar crime because he does things in secret. The Goslin is like a violent criminal, and we do not punish the violent criminal as severely as punish the Ganev. And part of the reason is because just like he beats you up, you could beat him up. Something equal about it. And the Ganev is a devious person. Now, of course, the reason that the Rashi brings is because he's not afraid of the Eibishter, he's just afraid of you, which is true. But it's just interesting to me. Anyway, that's not the point.
The difference in the case would be an armed robber.
An armed robber is a Ganev. Is a Ganev. Yes. List him as a Ganev. It's interesting. Today, God, which means if someone comes to take something from you and he's so much stronger than you that you cannot fight with him, that's a Ganev. Then he pays double. It's a Goslin when you're equal, when he punches you and you could punch him. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. It's very interesting. No, it's not. It's actually consistent.
Well, it doesn't actually make sense that one is preferred to Hashem and one's not. If the Goslin was preferred to Hashem, he would steal.
Yeah, but he's not afraid. He's not treating you with more respect than he's treating the Eibishter. That's it. The Ganev is more afraid of you than the Eibishter. The Goslin is equally unafraid of both. That's the difference. That's what Rashi says. Okay, here's the point. How would a person who's a thief for sure, a murderer possibly, daven to the Eibishter? And of course the answer is he believes in Hashem, but he doesn't believe in Hashem enough to do what the Eibishter said. Better Lipsker, this is a Yiddish joke. If you don't know Yiddish, it's just going to be a waste of time. But Better Lipsker used to verbring with us, and I received a lot from him, and I'm really appreciative. But he told us once at a verbringen that there was a man in town who had a klepto issue, you know. He put his hand on, it came away. Whatever he put his hand on, he had the hands like those reptiles that walk on the ceiling. Adhesive, poop, he'd pack it up. So somebody was saying, a state lay signiv. A state lay signiv. It says in the Chumash lay signiv. So he answered in Yiddish, was steht, was liegt auf mir nehmen. What's standing is standing. That's how we translate it. It's just written at the bus. What's sitting around, you got to take. Steht, was liegt auf mir nehmen. Okay, that's a Yiddish joke. The point is, he was a frum man, he believed in the Eibishter, but he had to make a living. Everyone wants to make a living. And one of the people make a living is take what other people... The honest thief, it's a great story. It's a great story, the story of the honest thief. When it comes to this Rebbe, another story, he comes to this Rebbe and says, Rebbe, how am I going to make a living? He says, you can get very rich, but I can't tell you how. Because he was going to make a living by being a Ganav. And the whole story plays out. He becomes very rich.
No, he doesn't. You become very rich by the end.
But because the police chief becomes intrigued by him. He steals every day 10 cents. That's it. He just steals 10 cents. He steals what he eats for breakfast. That's all he takes. A register full of money, he takes 10 cents. So he catches him, and then he helps him make some money. But okay. So why is that? And of course the answer is because Emunah, the greatest thing, I'm going to talk about it more on the bottom of the page, I'm trying to sort of delay it, but the greatest thing about faith and the worst thing about faith is the same thing. We're born with it. And the fact of life is things that we're born with, we tend to take for granted. It's human nature. What you have with no effort, you take for granted. It's the way David made the world. So this person believes in Hashem, but his belief in Hashem is not personalized. He didn't do anything to make it his own. So it's unsustained. It doesn't last. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu's role is. Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't give us Emunah. Emunah comes from Avinu. What Moshe Rabbeinu does is he inspires us, and that's the right word. He inspires us that the faith we have in the Eibishter should have the teeth that it needs. Should be strong enough, I believe in Hashem, and therefore I'm going to do what the Eibishter says.
I feel like though, it's not something you either have or you don't. It's something you could work on.
Yeah, and you work on it with the help of Moshe Rabbeinu. Yeah. That's the Maimer's message. That's the Maimer's point. But I want to go back to Emunah later. I want to delay our discussion. The Rebbe now gives us Musar. Okay, we're on page Chavtes. I'd like you to look inside, second line from the top of the page. Ubedakas, the second line from the top of the page, okay?
22.
Page
22.
Near the number 22, correct. Ubedakas. The Rebbe says, you think that it's the other guy, I believe in God, I'm a religious guy. When you look at us, I was thinking about this. I was in Pittsburgh and I went to the airport and I davened in the airport and I got on a plane and I sat next to people. There were 70 people on the whole plane, but half of them were sitting in business class. It was very strange. And you watch people and you talk to people, and two things hit me. One thing hit me with two parts, which is, you look at us from Jews, yeah, and we look at, this guy's really Hasidic, this guy's really from, this guy, he's like half fry, he's Chabad featherweight, light. If you compare that featherweight guy to a fryer person, he's a tzaddik. He's a huge tzaddik. Really? Why? Because he's so free, he keeps Shabbos. Okay, maybe he comes to shul and he goes to the whatever it is, the Bein HaShmashis and the Kiddush Club, but he comes to shul and he hangs out with his friends. He doesn't drive his car, he doesn't Michal Shabbos, doesn't on his phone. It's a big things. And on the other side, you look at the frumest person and say, he's a hypocrite. You know why? He misses Krishma Shalamita. This guy never says Krishma. And the other guy misses a Maidif. And they're really both true. So there's something very subjective about it. The objectivity about it is my growth. I have to do with people. That's what I do. Not a lot of people, but people. I mean, a lot of people, more people know me than I know. That's the way because of my work. But some people do reach out to me, and I try to keep relationships. If you reach out to me and you're mature and don't waste my time, I try to respond. You start beating the candle, I just, so you sit in my phone and you have a number green with 41 messages. But people who sincerely want my help, if I'm able to help them, and they don't waste my time, I try. So a guy reaches out to me, Rabbi, I'm coming to New York from the oil, and I don't know what to do. To make a long story short, I get a confession on him, I'm bad, and I'm an oisraf, and I'm a bum, and I'm a chazer. But in the message, he told me a couple of things that he's already doing that are wonderful, but I'm no good, so I'm supposed to write to the Rebbe. So I had this whole thing because I did recently a Q&A on what's between a pan and a letter, and we just put it out. Yitzhak Hassid just did this one. I recorded it a few weeks ago. It was edited. It was just posted, and he saw it. So he reached out to me about it, and we talked. He said, Rabbi, I don't know how to write. I have a feeling, a strong belief, and I do this myself. Is that Rebbe has to know everything that's going on in your life. So you write the Rebbe letters. How often you go? It could be once a month, it could be once in 3 months. It could even be once a year. The Rebbe has to know what's happening in your life. And I always tell people, keep the letters that you write to the Rebbe, because that's your best journal. It's the place with most honest. You look back at those letters and you can literally remember everything significant that's going on in your life. So I said, you have to write meaningful letters. I don't know how to write. I said, so write with your wife. No, she's not going to write for me. Whatever I said to him was no good. So he says, what am I going to do? I'm going to the oil. I'm like the worst chassid. So I finally said to him, I don't understand. The Rebbe is not interested in how bad you are. He really isn't. Trust me, there's worse people than you. He's interested in how you're going to become better. Just one thing you're going to be better at. Just one. It could be a small thing. You're going to go to shul for Mincha Ma'ariv once a week. You're going to come to shul for Kriyas HaTorah Mondays and Thursdays. Whatever, wherever you are. But just Just come with one positive thing and tell the Rabbi you're going to do this. For him it matters. For him it matters. Why? Because all he cares about is about going in the right direction, of growing. So today you'll do one thing, tomorrow you'll do one thing more. But if you spend your whole life saying, I'm no good, nothing comes from I'm no good. You know? And he was like, wow, I didn't think of that. I can come to that with one good thing. See, if the Rebbe doesn't know who you are, if the Rebbe doesn't like you but you're not Hasidish enough, he doesn't like the most Hasidish person because he's not Hasidish. Who are we kidding? We can be, the other Rebbe Hasidim, you know? To the Fidik Rebbe Hasidim, the Rebbe said, my father had one Chassid, my husband has nobody. You know that story? It's a great story. The Rebbe said to someone that she knew, who was a childhood friend of the Rebbe from Australia, his name was Altois. He came here and he went to see the Rebbe, and then the Rebbe was complaining. And she said to him, the Tata got ein Chassid, the man. My father had one Chassid, my husband has no Chassidim. Shmuel tell Altois. So he immediately said, it was 1960s, and Shlomo Kunya just got a shlichus to California. And he says to the Rebbe, he says, I don't understand. An American-born boy, and Shlomo Kunya is like a third generation American, or fourth. He's been here a long time. Raised in the Bronx, his most important thing in the world is the New York Yankees. Picks himself up. I don't know if he said the New York Yankees, but moves to California and he's living on bread and water. For your husband. How could you say your husband is no Chassidim? That's what he told her. She didn't say anything. But when he walked by the Rebbe Lekach, the Rebbe said to him in Yiddish, thank you, you gave my Rebbe, and the Rebbe used to call the Rebbe the Balabasta, and she used to call him my man. In other words, you gave her a different point of view. You gave her another point of view. The reason the Rebbe is our Rebbe is because he has this capacity just to see the good. You know, we're growing good, we're not growing, okay. It's not it's bad, he just doesn't see it. This is the kind, he's a one-sided person. He announced it when he became a Rebbe, he made an announcement. Mine is, like the Fidik Rebbe, the Fidik already made this condition, I'm not going to see bad in the Chassidim. What a miracle. The Rebbe once said, I told this to you last week, it's a nezach of the Chuntik and Nitzes and Shlech, it's a miracle and the not to see bad in people. The Rebbe told that to somebody. So that's the perspective. The Rebbe's role is to give teeth to the Amunah, that it translates into life. That's his job. So now, the Maimon comes along and says, you think it doesn't mean you? It just means the Ganef? You think it means just the guy in the street who's accosting people for their purses or for their wallets or for their fancy phones? Everybody is that. And the truth is everybody is that. We all are, unless you're the Rebbe and I don't know who, Hillel Padachet, Itcha de Masmin, we all are, I'm going to use a very bad word, but it is the right word, we're all hypocrites. We're from Jews, and there's things that we just don't do, or we just don't do well. And it's not only because we don't know, or because it's too hard, it's because we've gotten into a bad habit. So the Rebbe proceeds to tell us how we're this Ganef, how we're this person who needs the Rebbe to strengthen our Amunah. Like you said, we're a work in progress. That's the important thing. The important thing is that we're doing some work and doing a little bit of growth. So let's read. Ubedakas, second line of the page Chavtes, and in an edel way, in a fine way, Yachal kol echad ve'echad, each person is able to find this in himself. Whoever you are, you can find in your religious life. And like I said before, I'm sitting on the airplane and I'm thinking, Chabad light is light? Are you kidding? No, from they are. They send the kids to Jewish schools. They eat only kosher restaurants. They keep Shabbos. There's no Chometz Naz on Pesach. They put on film every day. Maybe they daven every day. There's such a subjectivity to righteousness. On the other hand, the biggest tzaddik, your people are very, very frum, and they have weaknesses, big ones. And in their areas of weakness, they're plain not frum. In other words, they believe in the Eibush and they don't do what he says. So the Rebbe says we're almost all guilty of that. And he gives you examples. This, again, the right word is hypocrisy. You know, when you want to sound diplomatically correct, you don't say hypocrisy. You say inconsistent. The diplomatic word for being a hypocrite is being inconsistent. I'm teaching Basel Lagani. I was in Pittsburgh for Shabbos, so I chazed Basel Lagani, right? So the Basel Lagani talks about Ruach Shtus, right? How do you translate Ruach Shtus?
Spirit of folly.
Spirit of folly. Who knows what folly is? I got up in the shul full of people. I said, Ruach Shtus does not mean the spirit of folly. It means the spirit of stupidity. You understand now? It means stupid. So my wife says, you can't use stupid. It's a bad word. I say, yo, but it makes the point. You say folly, know what you're talking about. Folly sounds like a malach that came into your life and left a stain on you. It's stupid. When you do things that are stupid, stupid means you don't want to do them. They're not good for you. It's stupid. We all have stupid. And the stupid is because we believe in the Eibishter and we believe in his Torah, but we don't believe in it that much that I have to be careful about every aspect. I have my strengths, I have my weaknesses. And this is what the role of the Rabbi is. He strengthens the Amunah to diminish the stupid. That's the role. That's the job. So let's read it. Hein Bali Esek. You can find it by business people. You can find inconsistencies. Right? What's the English word for inconsistent? Hypocrisy. Hein Yeshvi as well. People study Torah all day long. You have people who are very fortunate, like me, who literally make a living teaching Torah, which you're not allowed to do, by the way. So that's another whole part of the inconsistency right there. A person who spends his life, I learn and teach Torah. That's what I do. And I edit and post classes. That's what I'm a very, very fortunate man. Everybody's got their avodah, and each person considering his avodah has his challenges. So let's read it. This is true of people who find themselves in the 4 cubits of learning Torah. Please look inside. 4 lines in the top of page Chavtes. It's also true of those who find themselves in the 4 cubits of prayer. Everybody has, almost everybody has, the idea of ganva, a thief, apum machtat, at the opening of the tunnel, which he has dug onto somebody else's house, to break and enter. And if you wake up, he's going to steal from you, and you wake up, Chas v'shalom will shoot you, and nevertheless, Rachamon HaKarim. He's such a hypocrite, he's ready to kill. But he davens to the Eibishter that he shouldn't have to. He davens to the Eibishter that he should get away with it. Says the Rebbe, this is not just for the Ganev, on the low life, it's for each one of us. We all have in ourselves a belief in the Eibishter, which is unactualized in our behavioral life because, in the Maimeh he uses the words Ruach Shtus, the spirit of insanity, of stupidity. And he starts off with a businessman. Please look inside, 5 lines into the page. For example, a businessman. Where do you see in a businessman this hypocrisy? A frum guy, making a living. I have an acquaintance. I can't call him a friend because I don't know him that well, I'm not that close to him. But whenever we meet, we talk very friendly. So he's a Chassidish Yid. He is a Chassidish Yid. He's a successful businessman. His story was that the Rebbe didn't let him go on shlichus. The Rebbe made him go into business for whatever reasons. I don't know the details entirely, but we pretty much have a good idea why. In other words, he's not here because he wants to make a lot of money. The Rebbe made him go into business and whatever it was. So he said to me once, Yossi, you want to make a lot of money? Learn all the Maimorim about how you're supposed to be a businessman. You'll do exactly the opposite and you'll do well. Learn everything Chassidus says of how a businessman is supposed to act and do exactly the opposite. Now he wasn't saying this that I should do. He's saying to make a point. It's a test. When Torah tells you that Parnasa comes from the Eibishter, and therefore there's no way you could do against the Ratzon of the Eibishter and make Parnasa, believing that is hard. Believing that enough to live that way is impossibly hard. It's very, very, very hard. Now, so was Torah making something that's not true? The Rebbe once wrote to somebody who said to the Rebbe, Baba Mises. I know many people with this honest make a lot of money. I know many people who are honest. So the Rebbe says to them, where does the money go? If you make a lot of money and spend it on medical bills, is that rich? The Rebbe says, in other words, it's not just how much money you have, it's what happens to the money. That's what the Rebbe told him. If you're spending the money on medical bills, that's rich. That's rich. Have less. Be honest. And Yeh should give you health. The Rebbe was trying to show him that there's different angles of this. The underlying issue is the Eibishter has a certain mandate for the businessman. And for the businessman to see in his life, the following that mandate, translating into his life, is a test. It's hard. Okay? And therefore you have this so-called hypocrisy. Let's read it. The Av Shemayim, a person believes, 6 lines into the page, that all of my ability to make money comes from Hashem. And if all of my ability to make money comes from Hashem, doesn't it make sense that I should follow his prescription about honesty and integrity and tzedakah and shiurim, how a frum Jew is supposed to live? Because he knows that Parnasa comes from the Eibishter, and nevertheless, misamek betachbulas, this person delves deeply into all kinds of schemes in order to be able to make a living. Shehem mevalbelim oisai mitoira va'avoda, they confuse him as far as his learning and his davening is concerned. Mishura makfoim, at the time that he has to set aside, gam labale esek, even for business people. You're a businessman. Now business people don't have the same obligations as B'nai Torah. B'nai Torah learn Torah all day and all night. Business people don't have that obligation. But they also have their shiurim. When a businessman gets up in the morning, I sat with a guy last night, he's a businessman, yeah. But he learns 3 Parakim Rambam, learns Chitas every day, and then on top of that he has shiurim, learns a little Chassidus, learns a little Gemara. The guy's a tzaddik. That's not how he sees himself. I don't do enough, and we all have the same guilt. But a businessman has different obligations, but even he has obligations. And those obligations, I have to go daven with a minyan, I have to daven in a shul, have to learn a little Torah. Those are parameters. A frum Jew has to do those things. Now, a businessman who's not frum has the same business obligations, but he's got a lot more time because he doesn't have these obligations. But if you realize that parnasa comes from Hashem, the parnasa is rooted in the going to the shul. The parnasa is rooted in the shir. Or beprati is more specifically, kasher matzliach ba'asokei. If a person has a certain amount of success, you go into business and you do well. I'm chaya, yeah? You go into business and you do well, right? Now, how did that happen? How did I go into business and do well? Now, most business people tell you, I was lucky. I was lucky, right? Some people say, well, the Eibush just smiled on me. And then what happens? You don't do so well. So what's the attitude? What's going on? I'm doing well. Why am I not doing well anymore? Instead of saying, gosh, how did I do well yesterday? So what happens? Read. And the Rebbe says, I think the Rebbe was talking to an individual person, but the Rebbe says, you do well in business, and then one day, the business doesn't do as well as it did the day before. Whoa, something's wrong. I know I'm a successful businessman, but 6 months ago I was doing well. Now, I got a hiccup. So there's a reason for the hiccup. So I have to figure out how to avoid the hiccups. How am I going to avoid the hiccups? I have to start trying harder. I have to do more schemes, more tricks, meaning to say, instead of realizing the Eibush was the one who gave me yesterday, and today the Eibush is not giving me so much, tomorrow will give me again, I start to get all caught up in how to remedy the situation that the Eibush did is wronging. V'haina, this means, the Eibush made him very successful. And he made a lot of money. And he used this money for spiritual things. He made from the material wealth that he made spiritual. He took some of his wealth and he gave it meiser or chemish. He gave it a 10th to tzedakah or 20% to tzedakah, or meshabein time, something in between 10% and 20% tzedakah. And the tzedakah that he gave is forever. You know, my brother has a great joke. I'm sure he didn't make it up, but it's one of those classic Chabad jokes. A guy, a multi-millionaire comes to heaven. And he comes to the gates, he wants to get into Gan Eden. And he says, what does it cost? They say, it costs $10 million. He takes out his checkbook and he wants to write a check for $10 million. They say, no. Over here we take only receipts. Isn't that great? Over here we take only receipts.
The queen apparently asked Montefiore, how much money do you have? He gave her like a number, and she's like, that's way too low. He's like, I only have what I gave away.
I only have what I gave away. That's a great verse. And that's what the Rebbe is saying here. Mitzvah tzedakah. The mitzvah of tzedakah, he ha mitzvah yechid, is the only mitzvah sha'aleha oimer Hashem yizbarach, regarding which Hashem says, u'b'chununi no b'zeis, test me in this. And by the way, I think business people will tell you that. But going to shul and davening with a million is not going to make you rich. Kibbut Av gives you a long life.
Yeah, but doesn't Hashem test me?
Is that true? I don't remember. By tzedakah it says, but tzedakah says even crazier things. By tzedakah it says, there's two mitzvahs for Arichas Yomim. Shiluach Akana Kibbut Avim. But it says in the Gemara, based on a pasuk, Leiva Havaya Chein Da. When you give tzedakah to a poor person, you gave Hashem alone. Because it's his job. Tzedakah.
Tzedakah generally you can ask God for it back, or only Meiser?
Any tzedakah. Meiser Yemechuyev. And if for Meiser you can ask it back, the more than the Meiser for sure. But the pasuk, the Gemara says, if not for the fact that the Eibush, Rabbi Yechanan says, if not for the fact that the Eibush said, I would never dare say it, but it's a pasuk in Tanakh, so we're allowed to say it. When you give tzedakah to a poor, when you help somebody that the Eibush is supposed to help, you just gave the Eibush the loan, the Eibush has to pay it back. And I believe, I really believe this. If you'll speak to business people, they'll say, if I daven better, I won't make more money. If I learn better, but when I give tzedakah, I'll make more money. That's why I think people who are not so chassidish give tons of tzedakah. It works, I think. I'm not a rich man, I don't give a lot of tzedakah, but I think it's one of the places where it's much easier to see the cause and effect. You give more tzedakah, you have more ashiras. But it is true that business people, on the one hand, they see Hashem more readily than Bnei Torah. Business people see God in their lives much more readily. But on the other hand, do we really believe that Parnasa comes from Eibishter? Because if we really believe that Parnasa comes from Eibishter, it would be reflected in every aspect of our life. And it's not. The Eibush is trustworthy. So I'm a businessman, and I don't understand business. I really don't. And I certainly don't understand the phenomena of a businessman saying, the market is down. People have told me this. The market is down. I'm not doing well as last year, and I can't give you what I gave you last year. Now, sometimes it's true. And sometimes it's true not because they don't have the money, but because they don't feel like they have the money. In other words, some of the rich people going through their bad spells are still richer than anybody else, and they could easily afford. I don't know if you remember that the Rohr, father and son Rohr, Shmuel Rohr and his son, when the market crashed, they got up and they said, you know, the trick is not to give tzedakah when you're doing well. To give when you're not well. So this is what the Rebbe is trying to describe. I did well. Now I'm doing a little less well. So I'm poor. I can't give tzedakah. I'm poor. I'm broke. And the Rebbe is saying, so what do? You say, oh, I have to fix it. And sometimes when you have these ebbs and flows, if you're going a little bit down and you start playing games, you actually sabotage yourself. And that's what he's trying to suggest. A person, when he sees that his business is a little bit ebbing, starts doing all of these tricks, which is ultimately not good for his business, but it's not trusting the Eibishter. The Rebbe says it's a contradiction. It's hypocrisy. I believe in the Eibishter, but it's like I was in the Eibishter. And when things are going a little bit not so good, I start to look for all kinds of ways around it. Why? Not because I don't believe in Hashem, but because I don't believe enough in Hashem that if I do what He wants, He'll do what I want. And the Rebbe brings this syndrome, a thief breaks and enters, and he davens to the Eibishter. Why? He believes in Hashem. He just doesn't believe in Hashem enough to act on it. And the Rebbe says, business people are very ehrlich and very frum have that same issue on their level. I just want to finish with a story. I'm going to let you go right now. This is a true story that happened in my childhood, and I think I know with whom the story occurred. I'm not sure, but I think. A Jew in Crown Heights started a certain business. In the 1970s and 80s, Crown Heights was not what Crown Heights is today. It was a much smaller place, a much more financially depressed place. And if you started a business, it was not easy to make a living. Somebody saw what he did and started the same business. Classic Hasagas Gol. Classic Hasagas Gol. He couldn't go into a different business, but he wasn't creative. He didn't know how to start stuff, so he imitated. Now imagine you're the first guy. You started this business. Nobody taught you how to do it. You're this trend. But that guy started, many people are doing today, but he was the first in this neighborhood. Trying to make a living, and some guy's outsmart, he's doing it, you know. So he called him up. The first guy called up the second guy and said to him, I'll tell you something. You're never going to take 1 penny of my parnasa out of my pocket, because parnasa comes to Eibishter. So I just want you to know, you need help. Call me up, I'll help you. He went into identical business. And not only he meant it, but he did it. That's a chassidish yid. Maybe you'll call him a sugar, but that is what the Rebbe is not describing. And I know this person. I actually know that human being. He's not the biggest tzaddik, but he's a big tzaddik. This is, in other words, I believe that I work very hard to make a living. And you just went in the direct competition to me because you don't have the creativity to come up with your own business scheme. But don't worry about it. I'll help you. And he did. I will see you tomorrow morning.